Today is April 23rd, 2016, and this is an update on my South African Protea garden. It's been 8 months since I planted these plants. They were planted last August. They were planted probably the hottest month in Sacramento, and all the plants actually have done very well. Planted 14 plants. I've had 2 casualties. One plant never grew after planting, Leucospermum veldfire. It never grew, and probably a month or 2 months later it just died. So I think it was sick when I bought it. And then a second plant about a month ago started looking ill. The lower leaves started dropping off, and I understand that can be a symptom of rotting roots or too much water. So I decided to dig it out and put it in a pot, and actually since I put it in a pot it's starting to grow back. Let's go ahead and get a little closer to these plants. This is Yellowbird. It's a pretty large plant. It's growing extremely well. I did not get any flowers this year, but hopefully next year I'll get some flowers. Right here we have High Gold. It's a common plant in the cut flower industry. At least that's what I saw in San Diego. It's also growing very well, but did not bear any flowers this year. You'll notice that I did trim a few of the stems, hoping to make the plant a little fuller. And lastly, here we have Leucospermum tango, and it's also growing very well. You can see I have some nice blooms on it this year. I'm really excited to have that, and hopefully next year I'll get some more blooms. Let's get a little closer to this plant. Here's a close-up of Leucospermum tango. Super red flowers, and appears to be a vigorous grower. Here's a close-up of the cut stem on the High Gold. You can see some new growth starting. This is Leucospermum sunrise, which again is growing well but did not bloom. Hopefully next year. And then this one right here is Leucospermum goldie pines. And as you can see, there is one bud on there that is going to bloom. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I also, I don't know if you can tell, I did trim back the plant some. So I'm getting new sprouts coming from where I trimmed it back. This plant right here is a veldfire. And this is where I had a plant die last year. A veldfire was in that same location, never grew last year and died a couple months later. So I was recently in San Diego and I picked up this veldfire and just planted it here a couple weeks ago. It was already in bloom when I bought it, but since I planted it, it is growing really well. I mean, it's probably grown 3 inches, and I don't know if you can tell, but I did put it on a mound to raise it up a little, and I may start putting the rest of these, if any new plants I plant, I may put on a slight mound to get better drainage. This is Leucospermum spider hybrid, and as you can see, it's the best blooming plant for this year. It is growing really well and just full of blooms, and there's actually more blooms coming up, so this looks like it's going to bloom for a while. It's a gorgeous plant. It's just beautiful. I'm going to get a little closer so you can see the flowers. Here's a close-up of the flower, and I'll tell you, it is just gorgeous. It is just a beautiful plant, and I'm so happy it's blooming. I'm really looking forward to next year when maybe more of these plants will start blooming. This is the King Protea that I planted last year, and it is growing really well. It is doubled in size since last year. So it seems to be a happy plant. I understand it can take up to 5 years for them to bloom, so it may be a while before I get a bloom from this plant. And I've noticed here, I want to show you this. This is one of the Mimetes that I grew from seed. Got about 18 plants that I grew, and I'm going to plant one right here in this area here that I dug out and put in some nice planting mix, and I'm going to put this Mimetes plant here pretty soon. Here's a close-up of the Mimetes plant. that I grew from seed. Beautiful plant. I snipped the top of it when it was about 5 inches tall, and now there's 5 new growths sprouting from the top. I'm really excited to get this plant in the ground, and looking forward to seeing it grow in my garden here. I used to have bamboo growing in the corner here, and I removed it so I could put in some more plants. I don't have enough Protea plants, right? So I needed some more in here. So I planted a tilapia on the right. I picked this plant up when I was in San Diego from Chuck, and I planted it a couple weeks ago. And the one on the left is a Leucadendron Wilson's Wonder that I picked up in Berkeley. Here are 3 Protea plants from last year. Protea Pink Ice on the left, Protea Silva in the middle, and Protea Brenda on the right. Again, all of them are growing real well. And both the Pink Ice and the Silva both bloomed last year. I got 2 blooms from each plant. This is Leucadendron Discolor. I got 3 really nice blooms this year from it. It's growing well, and hopefully I'll get some more blooms next year. And the last plant I want to show you now is this plant, the last 2 plants actually. This is the King Protea Mini. I got 1 bloom last year from it. It's easily doubled in size from last year. And then this last plant here is a plant I picked up from San Diego, a beautiful flower. It's called Protea Andrea. And again, I got this plant from Chuck. And it had a gorgeous flower, so I had to have one. And now it's planted. See how it does. Here are some of the Proteas and Leucospermums I grew from seed over the winter, and also the Mimetes I grew from seed. These were all grown in the house under fluorescent lights, and then I moved all these plants out like April 1st. And they've all been growing really well outside. The plants on the left are plants that I picked up in San Diego from Chuck, and they're in the little plastic sleeves, and I'm going to get these in pots pretty soon. Here's a close-up of some of the plants. I'm going to have to stick some of these plants in bigger pots here pretty soon. I'd like to end this video with a close-up of Sunrise Hybrid. Such a beautiful plant. It's growing so well. I'm really happy to see this plant thrive. I was in San Diego recently, and I was talking to professional Protea growers who grow for flowers, and they told me that they can lose between 10 and 20% of their plants in any given year. I found that fascinating, that there's that high of a mortality rate with these plants. So I'm expecting I may lose some plants here at some point. But it appears that you can grow a South African